Imagine it's 3 a.m. You're hungry. The Mamak is still open, packed with people, the Tarik flying through the air, Roti Canai sizzling on the griddle. This is a completely normal Tuesday night in Malaysia. And what most people don't realize is that this scene, this specific, chaotic, beautiful scene, is something no other country on earth has ever been able to replicate. Not Singapore, not Indonesia, not even countries that tried to copy it directly. Today I'm going to tell you exactly why. Before I get into this, I need your help with something. My friend from Singapore, you know how they are. He bet me that this channel wouldn't grow because he said Malaysians don't support each other online the way we support each other at the Mamak. I told him he's wrong. If this video finds you, and you believe Malaysian content deserves to be heard, just hit subscribe and prove him wrong with me. Kita tunjuk sama dia. Assalamualaikum and welcome. Let me give you a little context first, because to understand why Mamak culture is uncopyable, you need to understand what it actually is. Most people think Mamak is just a type of restaurant. It's not. It's an entire social institution. The word Mamak refers to Tamil Muslim Malaysians, a community that traces its roots to traders from South India, specifically from Tamil Nadu, who came to the Malay Peninsula during the British colonial era in the 1800s. They brought their food, their language, their faith, and eventually, their way of feeding a nation. The first Mamak stalls were simple roadside operations. By the time Malaysia became independent in 1957, these stalls had already become woven into the urban fabric of cities like Kuala Lumpur and Penang. But here's what's interesting. Nobody planned this. No government program created Mamak culture. It wasn't a tourism strategy or a national branding exercise. It grew organically, and that's the first reason it can't be copied. You can't manufacture organic. Now let's talk about the food itself, because this is where things get genuinely fascinating. Tarik. You've had it. You love it. But do you know what it actually takes to make a proper one? A Mamak uncle who has been pulling tea for 20 years has essentially turned it into performance art. The pour, the stretch, the foam. It requires muscle memory that takes years to develop. There have been Tarik competitions in Malaysia, and the skill involved is comparable to a barista championship in any European city. The difference is that in Malaysia, you can get that level of craft for about 2 ringgit at a roadside stall. 2 ringgit. That's less than 50 US cents. Now think about that for a moment. The economics of Mamak are almost impossible to replicate elsewhere. When you sit at a Mamak, you're getting food that is genuinely affordable. Roti Canai for as little as 1 ringgit 20 sen, Maggi goreng for maybe 5 or 6 ringgit, and a massive glass of Tarik eyes for 2 to 3 ringgit. In 2024, even with inflation, a full meal at a Mamak rarely crosses 15 ringgit. In Singapore, the closest equivalent would cost you anywhere from 12 to 18 Singapore dollars. That's a gap of more than 4 times the price. And Singapore has tried. They have their Indian Muslim eateries, their Prata shops, but the scale, the density, the accessibility, it just doesn't match. But here's the thing. Price is just one part of the equation. What makes Mamak truly irreplaceable is the social function it serves. Think about where Malaysians go after watching a football match. Think about where your parents went after Tarawih during Ramadan. Think about the last time you had a conversation that lasted 3 hours longer than you planned, just because the Tarik kept coming and nobody wanted to leave. That place was a Mamak. And this happens across races, across religions, across income levels. This is extraordinary when you think about it. Malaysia is one of the most ethnically and religiously diverse countries in Southeast Asia. You have Malay Muslims, Chinese Malaysians of various dialects and backgrounds, Indian Malaysians, Eurasians, the indigenous communities of Sabah and Sarawak. And yet the one physical space where all of these groups consistently share the same tables, the same food, the same late nights, is the Mamak. Researchers who study social cohesion actually have a term for spaces like this. They call them third places, not home, not work, but the spaces in between where community forms. In the United States, that used to be the diner. In France, it's the cafe. In Malaysia, it is undeniably the Mamak. And what's unique about the Malaysian version is that it genuinely crosses social divides in a way that most other countries struggle to achieve in any public space. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, but can't someone just open a Mamak-style restaurant somewhere else? People have tried. There are Malaysian restaurants in London, in Melbourne, in Tokyo. They serve nasi lemak. They attempt roti canai. But something is always missing. And it's not just the recipe. Here's the real secret ingredient. And this is where I'm going to go a little deeper than the food travel channels usually go. The Mamak uncle behind the counter is not just a restaurateur. He is a community anchor. Many Mamak operators have been running the same stall in the same spot for 20, 30, sometimes 40 years. The owner of a famous Mamak in Bangsar, one that has been operating since the early 1980s, knows his regular customers by order. Not by name sometimes, by order. The usual is a question with real weight when someone has been eating there for a decade. That continuity, that relationship between operator and customer, you cannot franchise that. You cannot export it. It lives in specific places, tied to specific people, built over specific decades. And the Mamak community has maintained this despite enormous economic pressure. Property prices in KL have soared. Gentrification has pushed many long-standing Mamak stalls out of their original locations. And yet the culture persists, adapts, moves. When a Mamak gets demolished because a condo is going up, another one opens 2 streets away. The demand is constant. The supply finds a way. There's also something deeply intentional about the Muslim identity at the heart of Mamak culture that often goes undiscussed. Because Mamak restaurants are Muslim-owned and halal, they became one of the few dining spaces where Muslim Malaysians could eat comfortably, alongside non-Muslim friends without any awkwardness about food certification. This made the Mamak a neutral ground. In a country where food can sometimes become a point of division, the Mamak quietly solved that problem without anyone making a big announcement about it. It just happened. Decades before anyone was writing policy papers about multiracial integration, the Mamak was already doing it, one plate of Roti Canai at a time. Let's talk about the hours for a second, because this is another thing that just doesn't exist anywhere else at this scale. Malaysia has hundreds, possibly thousands, of Mamak restaurants that operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. During floods, during public holidays, during the middle of a pandemic when dine-in wasn't even allowed, and Mamaks pivoted immediately to takeaway and delivery. They never really stopped. There is something almost incomprehensible about the reliability of it. You can be in Chow Kit at 4 in the morning, or in Subang Jaya at 2 a.m., or in Ipoh after a long drive, and a Mamak will be open. Warm, loud, full of people. Try doing that in Paris. Try doing that in Seoul. They have their own late-night food cultures, absolutely. But not at this price point. Not with this variety. Not with this same feeling of just walking in, sitting anywhere, ordering whatever, and belonging there regardless of who you are. And this brings us to the biggest reason Mamak culture can never be truly copied. It is not a product. It was never designed. Nobody sat in a boardroom and said, let's create a space that serves affordable halal food around the clock, acts as a social equalizer across racial lines, becomes the de facto living room of Malaysian urban life, and produces some of the most skilled Tarik pullers on the planet. It just became that, through 100 years of migration, adaptation, community building, and the simple act of feeding people well for not very much money. You can copy a recipe. You can replicate a menu. You can even build a space that looks like a Mamak, complete with the plastic chairs and the condensed milk tins on the counter. But you cannot compress a century of lived history into an interior design brief. You cannot manufacture the feeling of shared ownership that Malaysians have over this culture, because it belongs to all of us, even though it was built by one community. That's the paradox. And that's the magic. So the next time you're sitting at a Mamak at midnight, half arguing about football, half solving the country's problems, Tarik going cold because you got too passionate about something, remember that you are sitting inside a genuine cultural institution, one that no amount of money, planning, or government strategy could ever recreate from scratch. Some things can only be grown. And we grew this one together. If this made you think about the Mamak differently, share it with someone who takes it for granted. And if you want more videos about the things that make Malaysia quietly extraordinary, subscribe. We're just getting started.